Elma Beganovich, founder of A&E.
How would you define an entrepreneur?
An entrepreneur, interesting. In the digital age, I'm assuming you're asking. So currently, yeah. So definitely, I would define an entrepreneur somebody who is very savvy digitally all around. And when I say digitally, I mean, from the extent of using blogs, right? To be very visible on Google and very much present to the extent of using social media. And so a variety of channels from YouTube to Instagram to Twitter, right? So just depending on where your target audience is.
You and your sister changed careers to do what you're doing, and it
Yeah.
seems to me that there's sort of an entrepreneurial story in the sense
Yeah.
that you took a risk to do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it started actually while I was still at Georgetown Law. So I was pursuing my LLM in securities and financial regulation. As you can imagine, it's a very different route. At the time, I actually did get made fun of by my classmates because they said, "What do? Take photos and of yourself and post them on the internet." So I said, "Yes, that is true. It's part of it." So this was late 2012. So this was even before Facebook Pages was out yet. So we were a little bit ahead of, the curve, if you will. What had happened essentially is that Amra, we had friends over dinner one night, and Amra was working at the time as an economist on World Bank projects. So had very much, both of us like this academic background, these kind of like traditional careers, right, of being an attorney and of being an economist. And then essentially, so we had, over dinner a conversation, and we were kind of suggesting tips. It was recipes for do-it-yourself masks to make out of your kitchen ingredients. And what had happened, at the time, still was basically Vogue and Cosmo and these basically traditional lifestyle publication were still, dominant players, if you will, when it comes to media and telling, women mostly what to, wear, where to go, where to travel, beauty and so forth. But let's face it, most consumers don't have, like to spend tens of thousands of dollars on skincare or millions of dollars on plastic surgery. It just wasn't, it wasn't realistic. It wasn't relatable. So this was kind of at still beginning. And so we had a suggestion, why don't you do a blog, basically, put up a blog and do some of these do-it-yourself tips, right? So do-it-yourself tips on travel. Like Amr and I had traveled a lot. Something, we took like from in college during college summers off and would go travel around Europe. And so our friends were like, why don't you put these, tips like, where to go in Croatia on a budget, right? So we started basically this blog. Amra stayed up that night all night, and she kind of was trying to figure out HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, just being savvy, and looking up, different things, forums on Google. And so she stayed up all night. She coded. So it was like she was using Blogger. So it was a very, like primitive version, and she coded, and lo and behold, we had our first blog up. And then I think it was 3 months later, we had over 100,000 uniquely monthly visitors. So and this is basically when brands started approaching us, seeing if we wanted to do something, and when we realized this can be a business.
How do you move from what some people call vanity metrics, just increasing numbers of followers, to real business objectives and goals?
Sure, sure. So vanity metrics, it's interesting. Even those vanity metrics, right, can turn into, to monetize. You can essentially monetize it. So I think in the way that that the way that it moved is that brands are, and especially now there's, and I'll talk about that too, like software in terms of analysis of influencers. But it's, looking at your brands do look at your target demographic, meaning they look at your comments, they look at your likes. So they want to make sure that you have a healthy engagement ratio as opposed, in terms of your following, because now there's a lot of inflated accounts. There are robots there. So people can inflate their numbers, but then the engagement kind of tells you the real story. So in terms of monetization and going away from, just the vanity aspect of it, is definitely seeing, your engagement, and then plus also checking like who are the people engaged. So is it, if a girl is, if she's taking a lot of in her bikini, like maybe she can advertise, like bikinis, but, probably her audience is going to be largely male versus, if it's a lifestyle influencer that's more focused on her clothing or on beauty tutorials, that makes more sense for beauty brands. So it just, it depends. You have to, in other words, be really clever about portraying your and really coming up with your online persona and then putting that out there, because what you put out there, essentially, you attract that sort of target demographic.
What would you tell young people who are in college right now about their personal brand and the importance of it?
Yeah, I would say it's very, very important. It's not at the stage, and even when we started, it was, a lot of people were just, kind of like joking around. I remember in law school we had conversations. This was 2009 and 2010. Well, don't put anything out on the social media that your, grandmother wouldn't want to see or be proud of. So I think it's evolved much more. Fast forward to 2017, it's not only what, your parents wouldn't be proud of or your grandparents. Like I feel that they almost don't matter. And I say that because social media is very much now used to basically advance your career, right? Whether you're on a traditional trajectory or whether you are, trying to be an entrepreneur or, going into that route. So both ways, it's really important to think thoroughly your online persona, what you're trying to communicate, and then, stick within those parameters rather than, using it some sort of like personal communication between your friends.
Is there something that is most difficult or challenging about being an entrepreneur?
I definitely think it's the risk factor, as you mentioned it. There's a lot of uncertainty involved. Now, with that said, you have to understand yourself. You have to understand, are you the type of personality who is comfortable with, with risks and uncertainty? With that said, there's potential for tremendous rewards, right? There's also, you being your own boss, but the downside of that, there's no one telling you what to do. And there's no that kind of, sort of a safety zone. You're very much out of your own. You're on the forefront, right, of innovation and discovery and exploration. And so are you that type of personality or not? If you are, that's, probably the direction you should go to. If you're not, if you like being told what to do, and some people, and there's nothing wrong with that, are more comfortable kind of in the passenger seat, that, maybe that's the better route for you. I think in terms of, women, I think social media is tremendous because it's allowed you to multitask, right? And what I mean by that is that you no longer have to be present at the boardroom meeting, right? And have to be present at the office day to day. You can work, even though you're working full time, you could be on the road, right? Still keeping up with the industry news, still keeping up with the, quote unquote boardroom meetings and everything that's going on at the office. So you could be at home, you could take a day or two, off, quote unquote. You're not really off, but you're still working. So I think for women, that's really presented like a tremendous opportunity. And they can, in essence, they can seep into markets that traditionally was for women, but it was run by men. So such as beauty and the fashion industry. So now all of a sudden, because essentially, all the financial, people who were on the boardroom, they're the ones who had the control and decision-making power and the influence. But now, with the rise of social media, women too can have influence. So it's very encouraging. Yeah.
Do you have specific data tools that you turn to that you think are ones that people would find useful?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I should also mention, like in the path of entrepreneurship, and this will answer the software question. Amra and I, who's my partner, and my sister, we took actually a summer off. This was 2014, and we did a Ruby and Ruby on Rails course. It was very challenging to learn back-end coding, having had a background in economics and law. So that was actually, but it was one of the best things. And it's basically a software that allows you to find influencers. We already use it in-house, but we don't have it available for the public. So meaning the brands that are not our clients. So basically the software will allow you to do a very quick search based on filters on Instagram and on YouTube. So for example, location, following number, and keywords are our main filters. And so brands are able to quickly find the influencers they want to see. So let's say they're throwing an event, I don't know, in Nebraska, right? Or they're throwing an event in California, in LA. They can quickly, get to those influencers, find them rather than doing it manually. And then what also the software does is that you click on the influencer's profile and you're able to see the engagement rate. So what I was talking about, you're able to see the like to follower ratio, you're able to see the comment to follower ratio, you're able to see the engagement rate overall, and you're also able to see the growth rate, right, of the influencer. So it's a cool software for that. And then it also gives you basically a suggested media value per post for the influencer.
So you've built your own proprietary software then?
Yeah, that's
That's cool.
exactly it. Yeah.
So why did you do that as opposed to something off the shelf? There's
Off
so
the
many of
shelf.
these out there.
Yeah, so it wasn't there are a number out there, but they didn't have what we wanted them to do. It's very interesting because we basically got the experience as an agency, right? And got the perspective what the brands wanted versus a lot of the software that's out there. It's basically like what the engineers think it's, cool and all this data and these analytic tools that would be just confusing to an everyday marketer. So knowing what the brands were always asking for and getting lost in some of this other software and it being completely, most of it not useful to us, we decided to customize our own software.
Everybody seems to be talking about artificial intelligence as the next, maybe already the current wave of marketing. Would you agree?
Artificial. Can you define what you mean when you say art? Because I know there's so many different sorts of, yeah.
Sure, chatbots for customer
Mhm.
service, filtering tools that get you down to a manageable amount of engagement with the right people. Those
That's
kinds of things.
interesting. Yeah. I think that it depends on the level of quality. If you're looking for sort of kind of run of the mill, if you will, maybe for lack of a better term, but something that's not, not focused on quality so much, I think that's an option just because I don't think the technology right now is very good. And for instance, when you're talking about chat bots, I mean, they can end up, I know some of our clients were complaining with their previous agency using those, like they end up on really inappropriate sites. So, and then you have, customers or, followers say, we saw this is really, and they lose trust with the brand. So I don't think, as it stands right now, if you're looking to maintain some sort of quality and reputation, I don't think the technology is very good right now for that. That's not to say will change, but, but not right now.
It would seem that people are coming back to friends and family as a prime source for trusted information. How does a celebrity influencer respond to that possible trend?
Sure. So I would say that that's not, I would, respectfully disagree because most people now, when they're shopping, I mean, they're going anywhere from Amazon reviews, and that's clearly not their friends and family, to Facebook reviews, right, to influencers. So it's sort of this like smart consumer that's looking all over the internet. It's kind of that, we talk about with brands, the consumer journey, right? So, they're looking everywhere. They're looking at influencers, at their blogs. They're looking at Amazon reviews from your, everyday consumers. They're looking at Facebook reviews from the customers that have purchased the products. So it's just this sort of a kind of 360 journey that the consumer takes. So I don't think it's tied down necessarily to any, to just friends and family.
You mentioned Instagram and YouTube and didn't mention Snapchat.
Yeah.
What, in terms of platforms, in terms of trends?
Yeah. So in terms of, it's interesting, I think kind of unfortunately probably Snapchat was brought down on its knees by, Instagram's Insta stories, right? So you had this, and I saw that in my audience as well, this large movement of influencers as well as their followers basically go over to Insta stories, and there was no basically use anymore once Instagram copied, I mean, maybe for lack of a better term, but that's what it was in effect, copied Snapchat. So it's kind of these hot, platforms. When I say quote unquote hot, I mean what brands are requesting and where, that where most of the network is. It's basically millennial network. It's Instagram and it's YouTube. So it's not, it's not Snapchat anymore. It is not Twitter. Pinterest has a completely different purpose. And yeah, there's not that many people like where you have frequent usage is those two platforms.
Tell me a little bit more about the difference in purpose of Pinterest, because I'm curious about that.
Sure. So Pinterest it's been very useful for interior design. So when we talk to some furniture companies, for instance, the brands, they're very focused on Pinterest, which is great. Pinterest can also, like in terms of images, if you're looking for aesthetically to put something together, again, more with respect to interior design, it's a very good option. And this is where there is a lot of noise, again, in that space. But if you're looking for beauty, fashion, right, gaming, food, technology, because we've also had Uber, as our client, HTC and so forth, those would be like the hot hangout spots, if you will. Modern day term hot hangout spot means like on certain people's profiles, would be Instagram and YouTube. We noticed, for example, on Twitter, it's just the audience was not there. So the audience started basically kind of disappearing, if you will, from Twitter. This was about 2015. So Twitter was very hot and happening 2012, 2013, but then it just waned off. And this is when most people, Instagram has only been around since 2010. And I remember we were one of the basic, like 2012 was our first post. We were one of the first people on Instagram. There really wasn't many when we started. So, and you can like scroll down all the way down and see, like Amra was just talking to a brand yesterday about this, but so yeah, it just, where the trend moved. There was for a while wine, and then Twitter got a hold and started video, and then, Instagram came and started video just for the posts, and then also did a video again for Insta stories. So this is basically where the trend moved. I think that the clients are very much in tune with the market. So we, when we always have conversations with our clients, they ask us for suggestions. They'll ask exactly what you did. Some will say, well, what about Pinterest, for example, or what about Twitter? And we never, because we know what the rest of the brands are doing, we're also obviously doing listening on our end. And then what our influencer network, which a lot of them are our personal friends, what they're doing, we never advise the client to go to any of these other platforms just because there wasn't either request from us because we started as influencers by brands, or from our friends. Nobody was talking about what they were doing on Pinterest. In fact, we had a friend influencer who abandoned her Pinterest account. Almost abandoned it in the sense she was seldom posting, and she had a stellar following. So we tell brands that basically what we do, we make them explode digitally. And what that means, it's your digital footprint has become everything. And more specifically, it's that no longer is it like you could have the most amazing store on Fifth Avenue, right? But millennials are no longer, walking into stores. They're checking you out online. And what that means is that basically your Instagram has become your store. So unless your Instagram is wow, right? Your digital footprint is wow, is that, people just, you could have the fanciest, stores in the world, but people just don't know because they no longer judge you by that. They judge you by your digital presence. So we make brands explode digitally, not only on social media, but also on Google. The countless that we have reviews that people write through their blog posts, and they're there to stick around for a while. Like, since 2014, the brand will get now hit searches, and they're basically blog posts by influencers giving them really positive reviews, which obviously consumers are looking at when they're, looking to make a purchase and establish a connection or trust with brand or relationship with the brand. So a lot of the agencies kind of became digital overnight, if you will. So they're agencies that specialize in television, that specialize in, magazines, billboards. And that's certainly something that, I could never take away. And we're not in that space, right? So I have a lot of respect for them. But when it comes to, social media and just digital in general, they became overnight. And so you have, these people that, don't know what Snapchat is, let alone have a Snapchat account, what you were talking about. And they're trying to manage, and increase the following of these brands. And it's not working. They're hiring interns. It doesn't get anywhere. And the brands see them, they come to us and they're frustrated. They're like, yeah, I think it's not bad, but, I don't see results. And so how did you get to the results? So I often say to our clients, unlike, other agencies or marketers, is that, the proof is in the pudding. We obviously did it ourselves. So that's very easy to check out versus just, talking, oh, I can do this and I can do that. But at the end of the day, like there are no results that you can showcase.
So you're kind of modeling successful behavior then for the brands, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, we know what it takes in terms of, the amount of, we've invested into content, for example. So to say there's no kind of brands will say, well, what's the secret sauce? But it really isn't secret sauce. It just, it takes a lot of time, and it's an investment you have to consciously make, from, your content to your engagement, right? To the strategies of collaborating with different influencers, of having events out there as well. So it's this kind of like 360 approach. And no, we don't take shortcuts, just to get that following overnight, because we know that's, especially for the brands who need real buyers.
Are you sort of a matchmaker between these brands and these possible influencers that are key in those brands?
Sure. So yeah, sure. We are sort of matchmakers, if you will. So our software does, helps us out a lot, obviously, in terms of matching the influencers. And I tell brands, if an influencer exists, we can, find the influencer. So that's very exciting on our end. Wherever in the world the brands are looking to, reach their target consumer. So yes, absolutely, we match, but we also do a lot of strategy, like on the agency end. So I talked about content marketing, and content marketing meaning we do photo and video production. So from engaging, models to photographers to the assistants, the project coordinator who's going to check out the location, to visualizing the entire basically shoot. We do all of that as well, because we realize that, the key, one of the key ingredients, if you will, is definitely content.
And so then at the end of this process, is it SEO? Is it business results, sales, leads, whatever it might be that is the end game then?
That's a really good question. So we have this conversation almost every day with brands, but it really depends on the brand's budget. So what are you looking to spend? Is it just earned media, or is it paid media? Or is it a combination of both, hopefully, right? So, it depends what the brands are looking to spend. Obviously, with a tight budget, you can't expect a tremendous ROI, because you need an enormous reach, right, to get into the ROI. But, if you don't have that budget as a brand, then you're more looking for that earned media, right? And obviously that's measured by reach, that's measured by positive mention, because again, consumers are looking for those positive reviews. So that's more of the earned media value that we talk about with brands.